Sometimes it's not going to stay holly and jolly. I heard someone talk about it as like a room, like it's like a big, like a wedding hall or something. There are some people that are going to be at the table, the family table with you. Those are your people who have proven to you, they're tried and true, they're on your side, they have your back. And then progressively people get pushed further and further back. And if you're jealous of me and my progress, you might be almost in the lobby of my life. Mindfulness and awareness are some things that you can practice. When we took that deep breath, it's allowing us to feel our body. And it might sound all woo-woo, but one of the reasons we want to be able to feel ourselves in the present moment is because we can detect when we're getting angry before we're too angry to slow down. We have this initial problem of we're already grieving a relationship that isn't what we wanted it to be, which is sad and difficult enough. But when we add a lot of judgment on top of that, and now we're telling ourselves something bad about us, maybe it's my fault. Now we're adding something additional to something already difficult. So try not to judge yourself this holiday season.
Hey there, and welcome back to Raj with Kate Eckman. Have a really fabulous episode for you today. Very timely with the holidays coming up, 2025 starting, and everything beyond that we're all navigating, looking forward to, or maybe not looking forward to. Here to give us some mental health advice, some empowerment, some good juju all around is Dr. Allie Hicks. She's someone I met recently. We're about to do an upcoming event together, and we just connected over Zoom. And I said, you got to be on my podcast because she was dropping so much wisdom that I know you're going to love. So Dr. Allie, thank you so much for being here today.
Carl, thank you for having me. You know I love talking. So you give me a platform, I will fill it up with nonsense. So here we go.
Well, what I love about it is that, first of all, you're just a wealth of knowledge. You're a fantastic speaker. And I feel like every question I was throwing at you, when I'm playing MC of the event, which I'm doing, where I'm like, well, what about the people in the audience who are worried about going home for the holidays because of different political opinions, or maybe they're estranged from a relative, but they have to see them and be the bigger person. But then that relative has a few drinks or tries to pick a fight. Or maybe our parents are no longer around and the holidays are here and we're feeling grief. And so we're all navigating so many things. In my training this morning, the theme of uncertainty was popping up. People scared about losing their jobs, or they just lost their jobs. So I don't want to start off with doom and gloom here. We all are struggling with things. But before we even dive into that, you have a PhD in psychology. You're a psychofuturist, so you're really into the evolution of human psychology. Can you just share with my audience a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I actually got an emphasis in health. So my focus initially was on how stress impacts the way in which our environments impact our body, kind of like what we call like the mediator. So I got a lot of experience in that, which really integrates well into where I am now, looking at like what's next, where it is that we are going. And once you understand enough about like human biology, you can begin to figure out like, hey, this AI thing may do something. Technology may impact the way our memory functions a little bit. And is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Is it something that we need to adapt to? And I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about today has to do with adaptation, which is one of the fundamental skills of humanity. And one thing that we are actually really, really good at, because we wouldn't be here if we weren't. And it's uncomfortable. It hurts. It's terrifying, but we are actually pretty good at it. So I work a lot in that.
Is that also resilience? Can you explain that a little further for people who are like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I feel like resilience is what allows us to adapt. Resilience is what gives us the energy resources to have enough momentum to push forward to change. So adaptation is meeting a difficult situation and being able to get to the other side of that situation through change.
Oh, and your mother, is she the one who inspired you to get into this field? Because you have a show on Discovery Plus and Oprah Winfrey's network, like mother, like daughter. What was your mother's role in getting into this field and diving so deep into it?
Oh, Cynthia. What can I say? Yeah, my mom has her degree. She has a PhD in clinical psychology, child pediatrics. And so I definitely grew up with her. I am actually the 8th doctor in my family. So everyone is a doctor. It is the family business. Got to get a doctorate in something.
Wow.
So I was choosing between this. And of course, every young girl wants to be a neurosurgeon. That's what every young girl wants. It was between this and genetics, actually. I was going into medicine, and then in the middle of of undergrad, took a course in psychology behind medicine. And then I had an anatomy lab where we had a cadaver, which is kind of rare to have a cadaver in undergrad. And she was a trans woman. And this was in like the early 2000s. So we were all very, everyone was really interested in her biology. And I realized that I wasn't as interested in her biology as I was in her nails. They were chipped. Her nail polish was chipped. And I was like, she's done so much work on her body and on herself. What happened those past few months of her life? What was going on? Obviously something, because she wasn't getting her nails done. Was it cancer? And so I was coming from the behavioral perspective to understand what happened, as opposed to a purely, let's look for tumors, let's look for this disorder, that disorder. And that's when I was like, I think this is where I need to go. And so my mom's influence was there, that I saw that she had made a career out of mental health, because she actually owned like foster homes, group homes. She owned a school. She was a CEO for like 30 years. And so I had seen what she did, but I knew I was going to do something different. So here we are.
It's so, thank you for sharing that. It's so fascinating to me. It just shows your brain, and why I'm so excited to have you here to dive in deep, that of all the things that you choose to notice, you notice someone's chipped nail polish, and not as a judgment or like, girl, you need to get your nails done, but thinking deeper, which is why you're here, thinking deeper of what's going on in this person's life, that you're right. They spent so much time, energy, literally changing sexes, and their nails are not done, and then coming to some conclusions there.
Yeah. I was thinking it must have been more of a long-term illness, maybe something that had, like, we're looking at, like, when we're talking about this, the health psychology, right? When our bodies don't feel good, our minds don't feel good. When our minds don't feel good, our bodies don't, right? So it was like something else was going on with her, and it was just, I was like, this is the moment. Because we had literally snuck into the lab in the middle of the night, because I was the girl who did extra work. I was the girl who bribed the TA so I could go in and like take more notes. Who was I? I'm not that girl today. I'll tell you that right now. But actually, I kind of still am. But so I was in there. It was like me, my boyfriend, and the TA were in there, and I was just like so focused on it. And I was like, you know what? I told them, I think I'm supposed to be a psychologist. I changed my major. I had to do they wanted me to do an extra year of school, but I ended up taking 50 credits in one school year. So I could get everything done the way I could get done. So I graduated on time.
I love that. Yes. Well, I want to dive into how we can help people with the holidays coming up, because the holidays are like New York City. You can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And a lot of people have the pre-trauma response is already happening. The holidays we think should be a time of celebration, but sadly, I think for many of us, they have turned into a time of stress or grief, or the travel and that expense and that exhaustion. And then what if dad says this? What if Aunt Sally says that? There's always that one cousin at the party who's got to ruin it for everybody. And maybe you're listening to that and none of that resonates, and your family is perfect. Ha ha ha.
But I will say everyone in my family voted the same direction. I do feel very blessed. I don't have anyone who voted. I'm not going to say I don't have anyone who voted in the other direction in my family.
Okay, so that's even rare, because that's been a source of contention, I think, especially for friends who in the LGBTQ community, some women who want certain rights protected or want the body autonomy. And so there's a lot of different things going on. But what is some advice that you can give to everybody heading into the end of the year here, where, again, sadly, I feel like people are in a state of frazzled as opposed to joy, So I guess, how can we get in whatever you're celebrating, the Christmas spirit, whatever that means for you, or really navigate this time of year with more empowerment and more clarity?
So one, I want each of you to look at me. I'm looking at what I think is the camera right now. So I think I'm looking at you. I want you to take one deep breath. In and out. So one, we have to regulate our system, because that's the one thing we can do, right? The one thing we are able to do is to calm down and slow down, because we make a lot of probably educated guesses about how dinner's going to go, right? We do know our family, so we can't ignore that. But we have to come with our own sense of stability. That's number one. Number two, set some boundaries. And boundaries, I think we colloquially think of boundaries as these big, mean, angry conversations that you have to have with people where you tell people, I'm going to go no contact with you if you say this and that and that. And those are boundaries. But you can make internal boundaries where you say, I'm going to do 30 minutes with my mom this year at Thanksgiving. And then I'm going to excuse myself for other reasons. We've got 30 good minutes in us. And then after that, it all hell breaks loose. So it might be about planning, like, okay, are we best when we're in the kitchen cooking together? Is that when I should be there? Are we the best just sitting down at dinner? Are we the best after? Figuring out when you come, when you don't. Then when I'm there, what do we talk about? Because we know there are certain topics that aren't going to be topics that we can really be responsible for having without yelling at each other. So what topics do I want to talk about? And what am I prepared to do if a topic that I don't want to talk about comes up? So these are the types of plans that I want you to make, as opposed to the plans of like, oh, it's going to be horrible. They're going to say this, they're going to say that. Just what do I do when I'm in the moment? And if I need to get out of there, what do I do? How do I leave? What do I say? How do I leave so that I can maintain this relationship if you want to maintain the relationship? And then where do I go while I'm healing myself, licking my wounds? Because the capitalism of it all has us really turning Thanksgiving and Christmas into something that isn't necessarily what it could be, right? It is about spending time with people that you love, and people that you love don't have to be your family. People say, blood is thicker than water, but I say, which one do you drink? The friends that you've made are the people you've chosen. The family you were given, you did not choose.
Yeah.
You woke up to them. And so I understand wanting to maintain relationships. I understand wanting to be close to these people that share your blood, your DNA, your bone, your everything. Taking a break and being around people that actually love you, that you chose to love you, is also really helpful. So those are some of my tips, because loneliness is a factor, especially this time of year. Loneliness is an epidemic across the country, across the world, I'm sure. Pandemic pushed this loneliness, this isolation. People are working from home. People are doing a lot of things from home. A lot of people's family members and friends have passed because of the pandemic. And so you don't want to be alone either, right? So find a way, if you have friends to spend the time with, if you don't have loved ones to spend the time with, volunteer. Go somewhere where you can just touch the population, be close to people, giving food, giving support.
I love that idea. That's always, every time I am thinking about somebody else, it fills me up. And then you also realize, at least I do, just how fortunate I am and how much we have to give and how appreciative people are. I like to do the Secret Santa for seniors, and all they ever want is socks and underwear. And it's so heartbreaking to me. And they're so grateful for a new pair of socks or underwear.
Where can I give socks and underwear? I want to give
Right
some.
now, I'll send you the link. It's really, really sweet. So something that comes up for a lot of us, regardless of what time of year it is that we get triggered either by something that is said, unhealed or disowned trauma that we know we have or don't even know that we have from childhood, perhaps. And it's all fun and games. And we go in with these good intentions and we prepare. And then someone says something and we feel enraged. What can we do in that moment to keep things holly and jolly?
Sometimes it's not going to stay holly and jolly. I mean, things happen. Sometimes things get said. But mindfulness and awareness are some things that you can practice when we took that deep breath. It's allowing us to feel our body. And it might sound all woo-woo, but one of the reasons we want to be able to feel ourselves in the present moment is because we can detect when we're getting angry before we're too angry to slow down. Because we've all gotten to that point where things are coming out of our mouths and we're like, why am I saying this? Who is this person talking still? Shut up. Stop. It's too late. And what sucks about those moments is they can impact our sense of self-esteem and our sense of goodness to, letting people take us out of our character. And so if not for others, we're doing it for ourselves to be able to say like, oh, let me be aware of what my signs are for when I'm angry. So notice, what does your body tell you? Strangely enough, when I get really angry, I get like an itch in my armpit. It's probably sweating or something. I don't know, early sweating, but whatever. I start to notice like physiologically, like, okay, all right, I'm getting a little hot. Sometimes I'll get a little hot in my hairline. So I can then tell myself like, okay, you need to change your body posture, sit back in your chair. I'm an edge of chair sitter, right? When I get upset, I'm on the edge of my chair. So it's like, girl, lean back, take your hands off the table, put them on your lap, calm yourself down, Soothe yourself, stroke yourself. I'll spin a ring. I have like a ring spinning thing. So find ways to notice that you're uncomfortable, notice that you're upset. Then what do you do when you're upset to calm yourself down? If you can't leave, quietly take some breaths, tap your toes, spin a ring. If you can leave, get up and say, you know what, I'm going to go get second. Let me go get another plate. Hopefully by the time you come back, they'll be talking about something else. If they're not, go get a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go back out. And then also, you can leave. You can actually physically leave and again, go someplace that you want to go. But when I think about conversations, I break them down into 3 parts, and it's all thanks to Marsha Linehan and dialectical behavioral therapy. And I think 1, what is my goal? So when going to something like Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, I will say, what do I want to do when I get there? Right? Is my goal to convince them that they voted wrong? Probably not. Right? That's not my goal. My goal is to sit down, eat, have a good time, share what's been going on in my life. So sometimes I'll even write out a little script of like, what are the things I'm going to talk about? Because I have such a multifaceted career. Whenever I go out, I have to say, who am I tonight? I do 20,000 things. Who am I? So write out what you want to do, what you want to talk about. Use SMART goals if you want, specific, measurable, attainable, time, realistic, time limited, and really say, can I talk about these things? Do these things make sense? And then you rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. How important is your goal? How important is it for you to get the things that you want out of this interaction? 2, how important is the relationship? So do you want to maintain relationships with people at this table? 0 to 10, right? If it's a 0, you're going to talk to them a lot differently than if it's a 10.
Yes.
Your goal is to prove to someone they voted wrong and you believe in them and you want the relationship at 0, you're going to scream at them. But if it's not really that important for you to prove that exact thing, but it's more important for you to get caught up on their life and you want to maintain a relationship at an 8, it's a whole different level of energy, right? And so you can keep that in mind. Then the third thing is self-esteem. How do I want to feel about myself when this interaction is over? I want that to be a 10 out of 10 every time. Okay. And that means you don't lie while you're at the table. Because sometimes we will lie in different directions to help someone understand maybe how difficult something was. We might over exaggerate or we might underplay or downplay our feelings and experiences. So we don't want to do either of those. We want to be authentic. We want to be honest and we want to be real in the moment so we can honor ourselves. We don't want to exaggerate. We don't want to lie. We don't want to yell and scream and act out of character. So these are the 3 things that I consider with every interaction and can be very helpful for people as they're entering into these tough holiday times.
Yeah, thank you for that. What do you say to someone where your desire to have great relationships with your family members, especially immediate family members, is a 10? You genuinely want to have this picturesque relationship with them. And your desire to have a phenomenal relationship with yourself and prioritize your own health and well-being is also at a 10. And by both of those being a 10 and that being perfect, they are at odds. It's at conflict because when, for instance, I'll take myself, when I am honoring my authenticity and integrity and my own needs and my own health, it's going to actually disappoint some people who I also want to have a 10 relationship with for various reasons. What do we do then? Because we can't honor both at the 10. I would say, if you ask me, I'd say, well, my well-being, I have to put first. No one else is looking out for it besides me. So what do we do then when honoring our own needs means we're compromising relationships with people that we love?
Yeah. I think 1 is the relationship that you want to have or the relationship that you do have. I think that's what's tough is we get this ideal version of what a mom should be, what a dad should be, what an uncle and a sister and brother, how family members should act. And then we have how they do act. And we have the reality. So given the reality that's in front of you, right? How important is maintaining that relationship? And being at a 5 doesn't mean that you're still out the door. It just means that you can interact with them a little differently. And maybe you can set boundaries and you can say you know what? I'm going to leave this conversation because right now I'm really not feeling good. So I'm just going to go in the other room. Because if it was at a 0, you might not show up in the first place because you don't care if this person leaves or comes or goes. That's my initial perspective on that. And then my second one is, you're absolutely right that you do have to put your mask on first. And so at the day, those are the tough choices is when taking care of yourself hurts someone else, triggers someone else, bothers someone else. You do have to start looking at the quality and the reality of that relationship, that if this relationship necessitates that I be less of me, I be less healthy, and I participate in sometimes the pathology of our family system, because that's what's happening a lot is we're seeing the black sheep are kind of leaving the families because the black sheep, and I put air quotes around it because I don't believe in black sheep, but what black sheep truly are is they are the pathology detectors. They're the ones that see the bullshit and they've always seen it. And so for some of them, when they're young, they see the bullshit, they can't get away from it. So they use maybe substances because they're like, this is crazy. Or they avoid the family altogether. Like, I'm out of here. Like, y'all don't see that this is nuts. And sometimes the people that stay are the people who ignore the pathology or who are uncomfortably comfortable with the pathology. So pivoting the way that you think, and it's not that I'm rejecting my family, but it's that I actually see them, who they are. And I don't want to spend a ton of time with that.
And it's heartbreaking. Can you speak to us a little bit about the grief that comes from not just those who are mourning the death of people they love who are no longer physically present, but the grief of mourning relationships that, if we're honest, have never been and may never be what we had hoped for or dreamed for, especially with mom or with dad or with the sibling or with our children. And the holidays really trigger this because maybe we're no contact, but it's like, well, I put that in air quotes, reach out to this person, but not enough healing has occurred here for there to be a productive conversation here. Can you speak to us about the grief and how we navigate and manage it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, grief is one of those things that you have to go through. And I think a lot of us have a hard time with that. We're like, I just read some book and then I'm on the other end of it, right? It'll just be gone. No, and grief it's not a linear line. It's not like all that you just get progressively better every day. It's not. It feels bad. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. It leads to lots of tears, lots of rage, the whole Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And you go through the similar stages with people that you've lost that are alive, right? We often associate grief with death, dying. It's also associated with terminated relationships, with broken, fractured relationships. And one, I think self-kindness is very important because we can tend to be really hard on ourselves. Like, I should be back to work. It was just a breakup. Or like, we always get in these arguments. Why am I even so upset? Like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And that adds what we refer to as a secondary problem, right? We have this initial problem of we're already grieving a relationship that isn't what we wanted it to be, which is sad and difficult enough. But when we add a lot of judgment on top of that, and now we're telling ourselves something bad about us, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe it's this. We're adding something additional to something already difficult. So try not to judge yourself this holiday season, right? If you're feeling worried, that's okay. Accept that anxiety, because we also in our society in the United States do not have a lot of tolerance for negatively valence emotions. Anxiety, sadness, longing, we don't like it. And so we feel like something is inherently wrong with us for being anxious. Like, I've got to get rid of this anxiety. No, anxiety is information. Right? Your body is telling you there is something big getting ready to happen. You don't feel maybe prepared for it. You feel maybe very excited, and that excitement is being miscommunicated to you as anxiety. Maybe you genuinely have had bad experiences in the past, because we can't predict the future without looking back to the past. So if we've had bad experiences before, we tend to assume we will have bad experiences coming up. And so really breaking it down and just trying to understand, first and foremost, girl, I love you. Thank you for protecting me, body, with all the sadness and all of the anxiety. You're really trying to take care of me. Instead of that, let's look into understanding it, right? So I'm a fan of journaling. So as we have all these events coming up, as we have all this coming up, I really want people to be writing more. And I know we don't have a lot of time. I know we're all really busy. But even just taking the time to speak into your phone so you can just get some of these things out, so you can start to process, well, what am I actually getting ready to step into? Is this more of an internal experience, more of an internal fear, or an actual fear? So that's like one of the things. And I feel like I've gone away from the question. What was the original question?
No. And it's good. It's about grief and grieving those who are no longer physically present, but also grieving the fractured relationships, grieving the best friend we no longer speak to, grieving the parent we no longer are willing to be in relationship with for whatever reason. Grieving our niece is no longer all about us because they're a teenager now. So they still love us, but it's a shift in the relationship. I mean, there's so many things coming up for us right now.
Right. And so feeling it, right? Accepting yourself for feeling it, then allowing yourself to feel it, processing it, understanding it, not just feeling it here, right? In this cognitive think space, but feeling it here in the body space. Where do you feel sadness? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your chest? Is it in your shoulders, in your neck, your hands, your arms? where is it? Getting connected to it, because I think that we often are too disconnected because a lot of people will come to me and say, but if I start crying, I'll never stop. And I'm like, impossible. You will absolutely stop and probably feel a little bit better. Holding on to emotions actually ends up hurting us more in the long run than just allowing them to kind of like breathe through us, to wash through us and to allow the experience. Because unfortunately, you're not going to live a life free of grief. You're not going to live a life free of sadness or free of anxiety. It's just about, what do I do when I experience it? Like, there was this Buddhist monk and they were asking him about like different emotions and different, like, just Buddhist, right? And they were like, well, I'm sure you're never angry. He was like, I get angry all the time. I just process it and think about it differently than maybe someone who lets the anger take them. And so when it comes to grieving people, this can be a really beautiful time. We just finished Halloween, Dia de los Muertos. We finished, a lot of the ancestor veneration time that is kind of like acceptable in American culture. But we can also venerate our loved ones that have gone on during these holiday times, having a chair set aside for them, having a picture set aside for them, having, in other cultures, they have ofrendas. And in American culture, we don't have such a connection to those that we've lost, but there are ways to honor them, through a prayer that you say before, before you guys eat, thanking your ancestors for coming before you and giving you all the things that you have today, right? We wouldn't have any of the things that we have if it wasn't for the people who came before us. Or maybe doing a little poem, if they really liked a particular poem or a Bible verse or something like that. We can integrate and bring in these types of moments, because the sadness over time becomes bittersweet as we allow ourselves to process. And that's what I think healing starts to feel like. It's kind of that bittersweet moment, and you having more access to the happy thoughts about people.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I love even the idea of setting aside a seat for them or honoring them in some way. And then it brings them into the space. And I think also, at least in my belief system, that they're always with us. I feel all my people around me all the time. They're always here, more than people who are physically present. And there's some beauty and some peace in that. And then I can hear them and feel them saying, I'm so proud of you. And they see what we're doing, and they love us so much, more so even than some people here. Because when you cross over, it's all peace, love, and forgiveness. There's no ego stuff getting in the way. So I think that's part of it too. Something else that I've really been tapping into and even doing a training on is helping us with our triggers, is knowing why we're triggered. So for instance, something that drives me nuts that may not bother you is when I'm at a restaurant or any public place and someone is on speakerphone or FaceTiming and they're loud. You're having, $80 bowl of spaghetti at Il Paseo in Beverly Hills, and you feel like you're at a sporting event or something. And it's so rude. And in my trauma healing certification, the therapist and coach and professor really helped me with, yes, we all agree that's annoying and that's rude, but you may not be fazed by it. And I am like, we have to leave, get me out of this restaurant. And it's because of something that happened in childhood where I felt a lack of consideration from a caretaker. I felt violated. My personal space was violated. And so that is a reminder of that. And it's enraging. So then it's not being, okay, I'm not going to be triggered by this, but it's unhooking from that story, unhooking from that thing that happened 40 years ago that felt like a violation. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How much we want to get in touch with some of that past stuff that is really affecting our present experience?
I will say, I think that can be very fundamentally helpful to be able to understand what we call like the etiology, the root, the source of where these triggers or these like buttons were formed. And normally, if you go back to original caregivers, whomever that may be, you will find the origin of these triggers and these frustrations, traumas, things like that. But I will say, you don't have to go back. It's good it can help, but you don't always have to. So there are some moments where you can just start here, because some people have memories that they've locked up and they don't want to unlock them. And here I have a theory. My thing is, I don't break what I can't fix. If you don't remember something, I'm not the one who's taking you through a past life regression. Because I don't know what's back there, right? I don't know what's back there. And I'm a coach now, right? So there's a number of different ways that we can do it. So you can go back. That's an effective, helpful way, because I also talk about how I believe therapy, in essence, is time travel. Because if we're able to change the way we relate to a memory, we only experience our past through memories, because the past is gone now. So if we're able to change the way in which our current self relates to that memory, we are therefore able to change the feelings and the way in which we function today as a response to that. So going back is fundamentally very helpful.
Another theme that I think is coming up for a lot of us, especially in our generation, is that we were raised as nice girls. And I'm from the Midwest, so I've heard my whole life, be nice, be nice, be nice. Even when I was being treated badly or even violated, well, be nice, be nice, be nice. And it took years for me to realize how harmful that advice actually is. And when we're being nice and nice girls and nice women, nice to everybody else, it seems, but then not nice to ourselves. Because when we are accommodating everybody else, it's at the cost of our own self-worth at times or well-being. So can you speak a little bit to that? Because again, the holidays is where we're seeing some people from the past or maybe we don't see often. And when the nice girl becomes the kind woman, I think a lot of people may take issue with that.
No, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of expectations, especially placed on the behaviors of people based on their gender. People feel like because you were born this way, you have to act a particular way, which makes no sense, right? And I think that there's a lot of pressure on women in particular to fit this role. And then as you develop, as you become who you are, you have maybe lines or stop gaps. And I think that you begin to develop this awareness that me being nice isn't actually important for society. It's important for maintaining status quo. And it's something that people want from me so that they can act how they want to act. And I'll tell you, this is a hard topic for me to talk about because I'm not nice and I never have been. Ever. I'm not nice. I am nice when I want to be, but I'm not nice. Yeah, I'm not nice.
I love you.
I like people. I like to talk to people, but if I'm not happy with something, there is no universe where people aren't going to know that I'm unhappy. Like there's no universe. I literally almost made a man cry. Like at a party, we were at a party last year. He said something I thought was absolutely ridiculous. I had to reinforce. I was like, "Are you sure this is what you believe?" Okay. But that's partly because I was not raised by nice people. My family is wonderful, but one, there was no such thing as a child's place. So kids got to be in adult conversations and vice versa. We just all got to talk together. And so if there was, we're a very heavily debatey family. So if there was like an article that came out, everyone can talk. Everyone's perspective matters. But if you're 5 and you have a perspective, it better be good. Because if it's not good, we're going to tell you it's not good. And we're going to help you figure out how to make it good. How do you think through something complicated? And we start very young in my family with like debate practice, like learning how to stand your ground. And I was never taught to respect people just because they're older than me or have a particular job. It's that, what is this person doing? And so I do teach some of my clients, like, it's not, obviously we respect humans for being human. There's a common level of like, oh, you deserve to exist, but you don't deserve to infringe on my boundaries, on my personhood, on my existence. So now when that comes in, nice goes off. And it's also being honest about what you want and what you expect is not necessarily mean. And I think that's something else that we get kind of fed into us, especially as women who were young during the 90s. There's this idea of like, don't rock the boat. You don't want to be disagreeable. Guys won't like you, and it's like, well, those guys, because I don't need anyone to like me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be cussing on your show.
You can curse here, but you just remind me of a colleague of mine who's a well-known sports reporter. And we were at a restaurant and some man said something to her like, you need to smile more. And I think if I'd probably react differently now, even how I've evolved this past year, I'd be like, oh, I'd probably just smile and be he or whatever. Because again, I don't want him talking about me. I met so-and-so at a restaurant and she was rude. But I love that my friend said to that comment, she said, I didn't ask. And I thought, ooh, and I feel like maybe that's how you would have responded.
Why is your opinion?
Yeah,
so
what
important?
do we say, whether it's the stranger, whether it's the relative, the colleague, the friend? We all have all sorts of things where people, they think it's like cute or funny and it's at your expense and it's actually quite rude and hurtful. So what is a way where we can honor ourselves and be kind to ourselves when we get the comment, or can't you just be nice? What would you say to that?
Yeah. It depends on who's saying it and where it's being said. So I've had men tell me to smile and normally I just do it. If we're in public and I don't know you and I'm about to move on with my life, sure. If you're a family friend, you're someone that I know, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation. And I might just be like, you know what, that really, I know what you maybe meant, or maybe help me understand what you meant, but this is how I took it. It didn't make me feel good. It didn't make me feel affirmed. It made me feel objectified. It made me feel like a piece of me. It made me feel like you wanted to control my body and my emotions, which are very personal to me. And I'm not cool with being controlled. And then if you don't like my level 1 conversation and you're pushing back, you're getting level 2. And that's a little bit more of stay the out my body, stay the out my mind and my emotions. Leave me be. I'm uninterested. I came here to eat yams. I did not come for this nonsense. This has to stop, right? But I'm all about reflecting the energy that was brought to me. So if you're a kindly old man on the street and really think that you're saying something nice to me and I don't care about you and I would never see you again, I may just go and keep it pushing. I've done it. Do I love it? No. But if you're someone that I know I have to interact with, I'm definitely going to correct it and tell you. And I normally will start with how it has impacted me. I don't feel really great when you kind of like tell me what to do with my body. And maybe you didn't mean anything by it, but I don't feel good. Instead of it being like, you're an a-hole, I hate you. How could you? Because then that brings up defensiveness. And if I want to maintain a relationship, I don't want to make them defensive. If I want
Yeah.
to maintain.
I think another issue, and then there's another topic I want to move on to as well, is when we have changed and, it is the holidays or it is the time where we're going to see people from the past or people we don't see often. And we've had our glow up, if you will, and we're no longer, willing to tolerate certain types of behavior. And we've just grown into a different person, which is a beautiful thing. And not everybody likes that because maybe it shows them how much they haven't grown. Maybe they feel uncomfortable that they really haven't changed at all or have been willing or able to do so. And so there's a little bit of a conflict there. And here you are celebrating, you've put in the work, you're celebrating, you finally care about yourself in a really meaningful way. And not only is that not acknowledged or celebrated, but it's actually looked upon as a bad thing.
It's hard to be close to jealous people because they constantly want to tear you down in order to maybe make their decisions seem more right to them. Because I think that we do bump into that a lot when we make different decisions. I think you mentioned this earlier that it inadvertently invalidates people's decisions. You don't mean to invalidate their decision just by being yourself, but they can't see the separation between the two of you, maybe because of their own pathology and their own trauma. So also understanding that the people that we're interacting with are traumatized and have their own issues and stuff. So that's why they're coming at you like this. But then it's like, where do I put somebody that can't celebrate my wins, right? My win meaning I go to therapy and I've worked on my anger, my this issue, that issue, that issue. And if you're not able to celebrate that with me, or you're just trying to pull me back into it, you now have to belong somewhere else. So there's been a lot of black and white conversation about going no contact with family. I'm not going to tell anybody to be in contact with someone they shouldn't be. So I don't have an official perspective, but I call it black and white because it is a little black and white, and there are shades. And I do believe a lot of people who go no contact have already engaged in the shades of gray, right? They've already done all the things to get where they are. But there are ways in which we can figure out where a person belongs. I heard someone talk about it as like a room, like it's like a big, like a wedding hall or something. There are some people that are going to be at the table, the family table with you. Those are your people who have proven to you they're tried and true. They're on your side. They have your back. And then there's people who are close, but maybe not at that table, who are in the front few rows. And then progressively people get pushed further and further back. And if you're jealous of me and my progress, you might be almost in the lobby of my life. That means I call you once a year. Maybe I don't come to Thanksgiving next year. Maybe I come for 5 minutes because I got to go to my partner's Christmas now or Thanksgiving now. That's a decision, again, a boundary that we set. It doesn't even always have to be articulated because sometimes you've expressed these boundaries ad nauseum. You've said it over and over again. And so you do get to make a decision to be like, this person can't even tolerate me being great, because a lot of times it is triggering for them. And you know what? Maybe I just, again, come for 5 minutes, eat a little bit of the yams that I wanted, and I go home.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'd love to hear your perspective on, diving into race relations and everything going on in your experience as a non-white woman living in America in these times. Again, that's a whole other show, and I'd love to have you back to discuss it. But there is some discomfort now, and I think especially after the election. And I'll leave it broad, but is there anything that you want to say or express in terms of your experience?
I think it is incredibly broad. And I think that at the end of the day, what these past few years, especially with this election, has shown me is that we have this impression that we can connect with everyone. Social media makes us believe that we can do something to fundamentally change 6 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion lives. Some people might be able to do that with their social media videos. I don't know, but not all of us. And humans haven't necessarily evolved to figure out how to extend all of this energy in 8 billion different directions, right? So when it comes to race, ethnicity, culture, religion, orientation, identity, I think the same things can kind of hold true. When you don't know something, listen, ask, be inquisitive, be open, active listening, like, reflecting back, learning as much as you can without having to place too much burden on people sometimes. And then just being open enough to accept, like, okay, that's, in yourself. You don't have to say it, but like, okay, that's not been my experience, but I'm glad that I've now been able to connect with this person. And if it's a question of, do you need something? Do you need something? Because now I think, like, post-election for me, it's who's in my group, who's in my circle, not like my group, like my race, but like who's in my phone? Who do I talk to? Who are the people whose lives can be impacted positively by me? Who are the people that positively impact my life? These are the people that I really got to like dig in with and entrench myself with. And obviously those people for me are all colors, shapes, sizes, but it's like honing in, because I think a lot of times we feel like the problem is like huge and it's too huge for us to really understand or comprehend. So getting small, getting organic, actively listening, sitting down with people and just being with them, because we're different in a lot of ways, but we're also the same in so many more. One study shows that like things like prejudice, for example, are dismantled through proximity. The closer you are to a group that you may have pre-existing beliefs about can be dismantled if you just spend time with people from within that group.
Yeah, that's why I just wish that people would befriend or get to know. And that's why for me, I'm grateful I've spent most of my adult life in New York City and Los Angeles, very diverse places, people from all over the world, and have access to all people. I love meeting people so different from me because you can learn from them. And then you have the people who say, well, I'm colorblind. I love everybody. And I said, that's not the answer either. You want to acknowledge somebody's heritage. Ask them about it. Ask them about their experience. They may not want to talk about it. I mean, for you, again, we could give a whole dissertation on it, but what has your experience been like being a Black woman in America? I'm so glad that I was in grad school with a transgender woman, because I see now, and the thing, like her demographic is just under attack, and she feels unsafe, and she's just like all of us. It's just she chose to change sex and identity, and she's brilliant. But the persecution that she has been under because of that decision, I just think if people really knew her, just even her, they'd have a whole different perspective on all of it.
We all want some of the same things, right? We want to feel good about who we are, our identity. And for some people, identity has to do more with physical body. Some is spiritual body, some is cognitive body, right? We all have different parts. We can go down a rabbit hole of how different psychologists have interpreted the idea and concept of self. But we all want to feel good about ourselves, right? And we will do a lot of things in order to feel good. Like a lot of people who maybe do something to harm someone will kind of engage in this cognitive dissonance process to make it like okay that they did it, because at the end of the day, they want to feel good about who they are, right? We want to be safe. We want to be able to maneuver through our lives without risk of harm. We want the people around us to be safe, and we want to thrive. I don't know of any group of people who don't want those things, right?
Yeah.
And so when we start to align with our similarities, it can be very helpful. And then like you were saying, and then not ignoring the fact that there are very real differences. Like there's this joke kind of, I watched this old episode of SNL from Hillary, when Hillary lost the election. And it's like Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. And there's like a bunch of the other white cast members are in the room. And they're all like, no, she's going to win. It's going to be fine. No, it's going to be fine. And Dave Chappelle's just like, okay, all right. And then they're like, oh my God, she didn't win. We're freaking out. And then him and Chris Rock are like, because like for Black folks, things have been hard always. Democrat, Republican, things get better, things get worse. But, when you have certain ancestral experiences, it's like, okay, but then a lot of my white friends are damn devastated. And I'm like, well, this is it's devastating. This sucks, but listen, my mom couldn't eat in restaurants when she was a kid. because of the color of her skin. So I'm like, there's a level of like what we do when things get difficult because we've had so much difficulties, no matter your socioeconomic status, no matter your perspective, no matter your religion, things get hard. It's interesting. We could definitely talk about it forever. So one of the reasons why, like, when I hear a lot of people talking about like, oh, these universities are making kids liberal and this and that. No, what they're doing is they're exposing kids to other kids, right? That's one of the really big factors about college that helps to make people kind of more accepting is now they just met more people. They're going to classes with different people. They're sitting in the lunchroom with different people. They're going on trips and they're in the dorms with them. And they're like, oh, your story and my story are very similar. And then they're taking a few classes that open their minds just about reading and literature. And really it's proximity. And so it's not a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing to get to contact other people and accept them and love them for who they are.
If you were running for president, and right now a huge issue in our country, sadly, is just the divisiveness for a million reasons on a million topics. But in your experience and from a psychological perspective, what is something that we can all practice that will help us come together, even if we don't agree on big or small topics?
Hard one. I think one thing we have to do is accept that we're all not going to come together. And we never were. Trump didn't start that. There have been lots of people that were like, I will never change my mind about something, which is why when it even comes to like connecting the family, there's a certain level of acceptance. We have to acknowledge that not everything is perfect. Not every family is going to look like the family that's on TV. And there's sometimes not enough therapy. There's not enough spirituality. There's not enough anything that will change that. So there's a level of acceptance that I think we must engage in as a country, that there are going to be certain factions and certain like polar sides that are never going to come together. And I think the hope is that the wish was that was fewer people than maybe we see. And I think we were hoping that more people were willing to kind of come to the middle and agree. And we might end up seeing that soon once people kind of calm down. But we also can't forget that we've just been through the trauma of the pandemic. We've all been through a lot and pretended like nothing happened. We just like came out of it and we're like, we're fine.
That we're not all traumatized and exhausted. I know.
We're traumatized. We're exhausted. We're broke. The financial instability we're experiencing with the perspective of more financial instability coming. And again, like I said earlier, we are good adapters, but that doesn't mean that you don't experience the negative effects of trauma when you're experiencing a trauma. And we have been through the biggest trauma of my life. The pandemic was crazy. And it was just like, okay, it's over. Go back to work, go back to the bars, go back to restaurants, go back to shopping. We're done. Hooray. I just got COVID like 3 weeks ago.
And it's awful. I know I was so sick with COVID earlier this year. It is awful. And then it lingers. And then you feel like, but just, that's going on. Years of all this election and political trauma, the social and racial turmoil that's going. Just the wars that are happening. There's so much. And I'm not bringing it up to be Debbie Downer, but I want to just acknowledge how much we're all managing. And I take so many classes in continuing ed, and you get in these courses with all these successful, brilliant people doing all this work. And everybody is dealing with so much. People who are 60 years old and crushing it in their career, they've lost their job because of the result of an election or because of this. It really is. And I want to acknowledge that and really just say to everyone how well you're doing. And then if you're, listening to this show and doing this work and open to these conversations and reflecting and having these raw reflections, thank you. That's why I created this show, so that we can talk about these things and go much deeper than the makeup that we're wearing and what we're shopping for and all of those things, and really just get in there. And it is going to be uncomfortable, but what are we doing here? What kind of life do we want to live? And that's why I appreciate, I said in class this morning, it's getting more and more challenging to be close friends with people who aren't professional certified coaches or therapists, or at least people who genuinely care enough to listen to you and to talk about these things. And when you say you're upset, to offer more than, oh, well, that sucks. So anyway, my day, it's just, we're not seeing and hearing one another.
We're becoming fundamentally aware that there's different levels of consciousness, that not everybody has the ability or interest in really diving deep into who they are. And then using that as a reflection and to understand the experiences of other people, right? We can call it consciousness, or we can call it like emotional intelligence, a lot of different words for it. Metacognition, the kind of the thinking about thinking. Like we're even learning that some people don't see images in their mind when they think of things. Some people don't hear. I mean, I could literally taste an apple right now if I chose to. Like I literally can taste a Jolly Rancher in my mouth right now. Like, and so people have different levels of connection. And so I think that we maybe have been historically expecting people who didn't have the ability to make these connections to make connections that we just assumed that they had. And it's not a bad thing because studies show that folks who don't connect to a lot of these thoughts all the time, they're happier.
Mm-hmm.
They're happier. So, you know what?
Ignorance is bliss sometimes, right?
Right. So what I do sometimes is I take a break from all the heavy thinking, the heavy stuff. And I do go like when you're talking about like fashion, design, beauty. And I'm like, let me just go to a museum and look at something cute.
Thank you for that.
Let me paint my desk pink.
It's so funny you said that because I was looking at my calendar today and it's almost, I feel like the little kid with the reward or the dog about to get the treat where then it's Thanksgiving, but but it's just looking at my calendar and saying this day, I don't have to think deeply which is one of my favorite things to do, but I do also need that. I'm like, I want to watch some show. I want to eat a little food. I'm like, I'm not even trying to eat healthy that day. I'm like, I want some chocolate. I want some cake or whatever I'm going to have, my pizza, whatever I'm going to have on my day off and just shut it down. And yes, think about fluffy things because we do need that break. But also if you do want to evolve and reach some of these goals and things, we do need to have some of these conversations.
Yeah. There's a book that I would recommend. It's called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And I've never just read it all the way through, but I like read the chapters that I need. And I think for me, it's been very self-affirming that when goes wrong, the most natural thing to be is uncomfortable and upset. And how do we continue living while that's happening? Because we're definitely living in wild times, something we haven't seen since like 1920s. And it's not easy.
And that we're here for it. And I try to say we all chose to be here. I do believe in that too.
Yeah.
We chose to be here. I mean, we really are living. What did I say? I felt bad for the younger kids, the kids that were in high school and college during COVID. I really felt for how it disrupted that experience and that special time in our lives with connecting socially, especially. And it was a few years ago that it was just people who are, let's say, 18 years old. Most of their life, every year, there's been an unprecedented event. It's like every year we're living in this unprecedented thing happens in that. And so I want to acknowledge it, not to exhaust all of us, but to pat ourselves on the back and give ourselves a high five because we truly have lived through so much. And let's honor ourselves for doing that and that we're still being parents. We're still creating things. We're still showing up and doing our best. And that's why I want to do this show too, to just give people the encouragement, the empowerment, the advice, any tips that can keep them going. So there's one more topic that is important that I'd love to talk to you about before we head out today about beauty. And it's about a book and a project that you're working on. And that's another thing, even with you, I don't know if it's ever happened in your studies or in your line of work where people don't take you as seriously because you're so beautiful. Or, I had a colleague was going to raise money as a CEO for her company. And the man said to her, well, you're a little too hot to be a CEO. And so, I put you in that category because you're so stunningly beautiful and you have this higher education and beauty is just such a subjective thing, but also it plays such a role in our lives, whether we care about it or not, whether we're deemed beautiful or not. What do you want to say on the topic of beauty?
Listen, I'm trying to control how much I do say because I could say everything. But But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right that one of the ways in which beauty changes us is it changes us because we see ourselves in the eyes of society. So how society sees us is how we begin to evolve our concept of who it is we are. And obviously our family of origin can change that, but we can't forget our family of origin was also might have been raised in our same culture and society. And so something as what really is trivial as physical appearance, right, can actually tell us what our worth is, can tell us if we feel like we're more valuable or less valuable. And then, and that's referred to as the concept of the halo effect, this idea that when you first encounter somebody, if they're like really good at a sport or they're really pretty or they seem to be really smart, you tend to kind of like put them in this little bubble of like, oh, they must be better than everybody else. Like, look what happened with like R. Kelly, right? He has this talent. So people ignore all the other bad things and focus on the good things. So the beauty is good principle is a concept that came from the halo effect. It's this idea that beautiful people are somehow better, are somehow smarter, faster, stronger, all of that. And then because of that, sometimes beautiful people actually do perform better because they think they should perform better. So they feel comfortable enough to. Whereas when you're told by society that you're not attractive, that is actually more harmful than being told you're beautiful is helpful because it pushes you to the fringes. It tells you don't try, don't work hard. And I think as a society, we've got to figure out what we're going to do about this because we've got to fix this. We cannot lock people into place because of something that's actually supposed to be fun. Beauty is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun to choose what you want to wear today and what kind of makeup. You don't have to wear the same type of makeup that everyone else on social media is doing. If you want to do something entirely different, you should and can do that. But what traps us is the way in which society judges us based on something we can't control. The way we woke up in this planet and in this world. And I have had professors and supervisors, when I was training in psychology, they would tell me like, you've got to stop dressing well at work.
Wow.
And like, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't crazy, but like, I would wear colors because psych hospitals can get sad,
Yeah.
and they were like, wear more khaki. And I was like, I can't. I was like, all the people are khaki. All the clothes are khaki. All the buildings here are khaki. We're in the middle of the desert. The sand is khaki. I was like, if I see one more khaki thing, I'm going to be in the psych hospital. I need some color. So I would show up to work in like yellow and stuff like that. But there was a conversation about like the way that I physically looked and how I use that or can't use that in therapy. And I even ran into an issue where I got out of grad school when I was really young. And I was in grad school when I was young and I looked young. I don't know if I look young anymore, but
yes, you do.
It was hard. Thank you. Appreciate you. It was hard for older people to connect with a 26-year-old girl, 27-year-old girl with a PhD. And they're like, you don't know. And then I looked even younger than that. So they're like, baby, child, go home.
Yeah.
And I think it's a blessing I still think it was a blessing. So I'm not like, it was so hard. It was horrible to be young. But it was just another factor that I had to negotiate, again, adapt with, because we're all given something and we just have to figure out how to use it. And beauty is another one of those things.
It is. And then it's how do we define beauty? And I'd love to get a definition. But on the flip side, there's plenty of physically beautiful people who the way they treat other people or the way they act makes them ugly. Or, maybe it's the blonde in me. There's the dumb blonde stereotype where, and I know I get judged based on how I look all the time. I can see it in people. You get the positives. So we've discussed that. But there's also the people who think you're dumb, who think you're who you remind them of the mean girl in high school because of how you look. I mean, I've had people communicate to me in a shocked way about how nice I am, how smart I am. And, I've been underestimated my whole life. But the fact that people are surprised, usually women, it's surprised how nice I am, genuinely nice and caring and loving. And men, and they're a little by it, some of them, how smart I am, how educated I am. And I remember one guy, this sports agent at Northwestern where I went to grad school, and I was there for an ESPN show taping. And he came up to me after and he said, are you a model? Are you just in the audience to look beautiful? And I looked at him like, what is he talking about? And then his next comment was, you're not a student here, are you? And I said, why? Do I look stupid? And it was like a whole thing. But so there's also that too. There's some people who are beautiful and can be vapid, or they think you're vapid as well. But what even is beauty? Again, it's subjective, but who beautiful according to whom?
One, when people underestimate you, this is a little sociopathic piece of my brain. I'm not a sociopath. I wished to be. It's not my lot in life. But the little piece of me that can connect with it, let them and take everything. If someone's going to come to you acting stupid and being a jerk and trying to take advantage of you in a way and say like, oh, you're only this one 2-dimensional thing, that sets something off in me. And I'm like, oh, you think I'm dumb? Okay. Because I've definitely had a lot of that.
I'll show you. There is something about that. And I will say, and it makes me sad again. We all do things in our teens and 20s, but I remember going on job interviews right out of college, and I would never wear my hair down because I've got a lot of it, and I would make it darker and wear it back. And I guess in many ways, I didn't even fully consciously know I was doing it at the time. I would make myself look uglier. I would wear the frumpier clothes, the ugly khaki skirt, conservative. And it makes me sad because I didn't want to it was communicated to me early. You're threatening, you're intimidating. Again, I'm 5'10" and look like Barbie. And so I'm like, well, and it is that notion of ugly yourself down, dumb yourself
Yes.
down, tone it down, quiet down so you don't upset or offend or intimidate anybody. And it's like, F that. And now I'm like, let me be blonder. Let me be bolder.
Yeah.
Let me talk about all the things, but it's sad.
Yeah. And it was a different time because when we were younger, you genuinely wouldn't get the job, right? If you were too intimidating, if you didn't fit the culture. That was the language that I got. Like, do you fit the culture here? So, but luckily we've seen society shift in what they accept and how there are segments of society that still may have this older perspective of like, well, you got to dumb it down. You've got to look less than but then there's another segment of society that is much more accepting and welcoming. And also now that we work from home more, I think there's a little bit more flexibility and people are able to kind of have their own personal style because they're not having to go into an office every day that has rules about that. But yes, society wants consistency. It wants homogeneity. It wants to know what it is going to get, which is economical, right? We create these things called heuristics because we can't know, let's say, every woman on the planet. So we kind of create a shortcut in our mind of what a woman is. And given how you were raised, where you were raised, your mom, your aunt, your sisters, you formed an idea of what a woman is. So when you encounter a woman, most people will kind of say like, oh, okay, this is my of a woman. But if she's not like that, I have to adjust. And hopefully you do this privately. So you're not looking like an while you're talking and being like, oh, you're a blonde and you have thoughts? Weird. Like what? What? Why would you think that? Like, one, I know why you would think that because you watch too much TV, because there's actually no correlation, right, to hair color and intelligence. You just watch television shows that played up on old tropes that make sense. So it shows to me that your parents left you in front of a TV for a long time. And maybe you don't interact with a lot of people to a deep level. And then you can't accommodate new information. So you meet a woman that has blonde hair and is very smart and wonderful. And now you need to change your perspective of what a woman is. You have to add that to your little heuristic. But a lot of people can't do that. They just say, no, you're just the weird outlier. And so we've as a society got to start doing better to open up our perspectives and understand that there are some things we didn't ask for. And as far as I know, and like I was saying, I was considering a PhD in genetics. I do not know of a correlation between genes for blonde hair and genes for IQ. There isn't that. As far as I know, that has not been discovered, right? And so it's not founded in reality. It's founded in social perspectives and social desire to kind of limit people's mobility. Because we also can't forget that we have a society that in American society, and this gets to what beauty is. In American society, white women have been the standard of what is beautiful. And not all white women, but a certain segment of white women. And you don't fit that very small sliver. They want you to know that bad things can happen to you. We won't marry you. We won't treat you as well. We won't esteem you. But if you do fit this tiny sliver of what is beautiful, we'll give you the moon, when in reality, they'll give you containment. They'll have you in a shelf, in a cage, so everyone can look at you. And I think that women are noticing this now, and we are realizing slowly that there's not as much benefit for the women in the cage on the shelf. They're not getting as much as maybe they might really want, because now we're seeing, women's health rights are being stripped away. So am I really this protected thing? Or am I actually a commodity? Were you actually taught that me, my hair, my skin, my size, my nose, my eyes are just something to make you look better, and that maybe none of this really means anything? So maybe this idea of what is beautiful in our country, because our country has seen a few things as beautiful: fair skin, body size has changed. It changes, but it's normally lean slim, right? It kind of it leans slim. We've seen pivots, large eyes, smaller nose, smaller round mouth, longer hair. For women, shorter stature. We've seen these types of things repeated kind of over and over again. And we see little changes, eyebrows change, hairstyle changes, updos, downdos, body size, but consistency, skin color, light, hair color, typically light, body's typically small, eyes typically big. Things that are youthful, make people look young. These are things that we kind of see over and over again. But I think we need to liberate beauty from culture.
Ooh.
I think it is something that is for us to enjoy, right? Beautiful people, beautiful places, beautiful things, beautiful vistas and parks. It is something that is meant to make us feel in awe, to stop us in our tracks and have you go like, oh my God, look at that sunset. Oh, everybody gather, look at the sunset. And we've removed human beauty from that. And we've turned it into something that's rejecting, limiting. And I want to undo that.
Is that why it was important for you to take on this topic of beauty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I saw how much it shaped people and how much it changes you if you are beautiful or if you're not beautiful. And there's negatives on both sides for people experiencing both. The really pretty girls who experience a lot of the rejection and men don't want to come to them and talk to them and they feel like they're always called a stupid and this. And then the women who aren't attractive, who are also rejected, told they're not good enough, they're not smart. You're hearing the same things on both sides. Because the problem isn't beautiful, it's women. The problem is they hate women. They want us to be controllable. And once we start to realize that it's not really about this is just a excuse to tell us how to feel, what we should do with our body. If we should smile, if we should cover it, if we should expose it. Everyone has an opinion. And at the end of the day, my beauty's for me. I want to be able to look in the mirror and say, girl, you look great. No matter whatever I'm wearing. But society wants to dictate what we do because it wants to control women. It's a whole thing by the book.
Yeah, I can't. What is this? It's coming out in a year or so. What is it called?
It's called The Problem with Pretty.
Ooh, 2026. Problem with Pretty. I can't wait to read this and dive in and have you back to talk about it. And I think I'll just leave everyone with this and we'll head out here is about pretty and beauty to me is connection.
Yeah.
It's conversations like this, is feeling comfortable in your skin, regardless of your weight and what you're wearing and all those things. I love nice clothes and nice things and nice hair and makeup and skincare as much as the next person, but you will never feel more beautiful than when you are in the arms of someone who sees you and loves you and cares for you. And even if that person is you or your puppy or whomever, but just being able to look in the mirror and just say, I'm proud of you. You've been through it. You keep going. You've stayed in integrity and authenticity. Like, you know who you are. I mean, there's so many things that make us beautiful. And I really want to start cultivating more of those characteristics and learning what that even means. And we can change things. That's the thing I want to do on this show is change consciousness, change the world by these conversations, these ideas, these thoughts, and that we can have a different thought. We can change. We can have different opinions. It doesn't matter if everybody else thinks this thing. If we think something different and that becomes our truth and how we choose to live our life based on that truth. I mean, that's power. Beauty is power and power is beauty. So anyway, we could go on and you clearly need to come back, but I'd love to give you just that final thought that you'd love to have. We've tackled many topics and we've talked about many things, and there's so much swirling around, but I'd love if you could leave us with a piece of advice that can give us more inner peace as it relates to all these topics as we head into another beautiful new year.
Yeah, I mean, so many final thoughts, but I think one is that wherever you go, you are there. And so when we do the work to connect with ourselves, to constantly learn ourselves, because we change all the time. So we are constantly having to be with ourselves, date ourselves, and understand the motivations that we have, the better off we are. Because we can't control the outside, but we can control what's going on inside.
Yeah. And to partner with an incredible therapist or coach like yourself or like me or all the people out there. And it is so important to have that thought partner in life who really can see you and help you navigate. And I just appreciate you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. You're such a gem. And thanks to all of you for being here, especially until the end. We appreciate you. Happy holidays. I'm giving you a big hug, wishing you all the best. May all your dreams come true. going into 25. Thank you so much. We'll be here next week, same time, same place, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.